Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 349, and today's date is April 24th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Central Bankers Give the Green Light to Provoke War. Because, really, what are we seeing? Since the CIA director was there, FBI, and Vice President Joe Biden, who all visited Ukraine, as soon as the Vice President left, what did we see? We saw the anti-terrorism forces move forward. They came out of the pause state and they started moving forward, making a crackdown of the people in Ukraine. So you have Ukraine military going after the peaceful demonstration of the people at this time. And of course they're going to defend themselves if someone is firing at them. Of course, it makes complete sense. And what we are seeing right now is the central bankers, U.S. government, continually provoking, trying to get something started. And this is not the only area they're doing it on. Right now they want all eyes on Ukraine. They're keeping you fixated on what's happening there. Meanwhile, under the covers, in the dark of the night, things are happening in Syria. But what we're seeing a complete push, and they're trying to provoke Russia into doing something. And Russia just made a move. They brought in troops, and they decided to have and conduct drills on the border of Ukraine and Russia. Now, you have to remember, Russia can do whatever it wants in its own country. It doesn't matter if it's on the borders or in the middle of Russia. Just like the United States or any other country, they can have drills inside their country. And it's very ridiculous for Ukraine officials to say, whoa, what are you doing here? Because they have no say in what another country does inside its borders. So we can see what's happening. Now, if we really look at this, and we look at this compared to what's happening in Syria, we have the puppet government in Ukraine coming down on the people and using military force. This is the same complaint the United States government has about President Assad, isn't it? That he's using military force on his own people. This shouldn't be allowed. The people want freedom. They want democracy. Well, this is what the people are doing in Ukraine. They want to have a dialogue and have a referendum to secede from Ukraine. But guess what? They will not let this happen. So those people do not get democracy. They do not get freedom. They are called terrorists. So we can see the double standard here. We can see what is going on. And again, the end goal is war. They will not let up. They will continue pushing this, and they do not care where this gets started. It makes no difference whatsoever. And the central bankers, it looks like they're giving the green light. Go ahead, provoke all you want. Let's see if Russia does something. And if they don't do anything, we will start this someplace else, because we know the economy is collapsing and we need to get this war started. Now, we might have to use an event here in the United States, but let's see first if we can get something going in other places. And we're going to discuss more of this a little later in the report. Let's get into the economic collapse news and see all the propaganda that they're throwing at us, and let's try to debunk what they're trying to tell us. Well, we see Caterpillar right now. Of course, their stock is soaring and saying their earnings are fantastic, but what's really happening is we're seeing a lot of the buyback of the stocks. They've scaled back on the number of factories, and they let go more people. And what we're seeing right now, Caterpillar had about 116,000 total full-time employees in Q1, and from a year ago at the same time, they are down by almost 8,500 employees. So the number of employees decreased. So what does that mean? They have less benefits, less retirement, and the salaries they can subtract. So this is how they're making it look like they are doing better than they really are. And of course, sales are still plunging around the world, and they can't stop it. The only way they can mask it is to let people go, close factories, and do everything they possibly can to make it look like they're earning money. Now, we understand that the economy is a complete illusion. We get it. We know what's going on here, and we see retail stores closing left and right, employees being laid off. We understand that the government is completely manipulating the calculation of unemployment to keep the illusion alive. And this is what they are doing because they have to do this so they can create this event so all eyes are off of them and the Fed, and all eyes are on another country, which will then lead to war. And what we're seeing right now is the initial jobless claims surge from 304,000 to 329,000 this week, and this is the biggest miss in expectations in over 2 months. But again, what they're going to do is they're going to massage the data. They're going to revise some numbers, and they'll make it seem like the unemployment rate actually came down from this point. And it seems like they do this quite often. Now, in my last couple of reports, my last 100 or so, I talk about real estate and how it's declining every single day. And we're seeing more and more evidence come out that this entire market was completely pumped up. But what's very interesting, and I discuss the cash influx into real estate to pump up the market to make it look like everything is getting better. The banks are holding inventory off the market to make it look like there's a shortage, and we see what's happening. I know many people, and actually people have been writing into me that people have been foreclosed on their homes, and they're allowing them to stay in their homes. And this is the same story I had with a friend who's still living in his home, not paying his mortgage. The bank is not going to do anything about this, and they're just letting him live there and take care of the house. And this is happening in many places across the country. This way, the banks do not have to put it on their books. They can keep it off of the foreclosure. These are houses that are not for sale. Think about this. And they can make it seem like there's an inventory shortage out there. But what's really interesting about the cash purchases is that we're noticing that a lot of the cash purchases are on condos, which are making up about 80% of the purchases right now. And they found, CoreLogic found 80% of all condos in key markets such as Florida, Nevada, and New York are all cash. As of January 2014, Florida and Nevada have the highest cash share for condos across the country, with shares of about 81.2% and 80.5%. These high rates could be because of several factors, including investors buying up properties and the overall shrinking of the mortgage markets. Well, we understand that. Mortgage companies are laying off tens of thousands of people. We see mortgage originations and refinancing completely declining and imploding on themselves, and first-time home buyers are pretty much non-existent, and they're disappearing. Why? Because the youth of America coming out of school since 2008 cannot find the high-paying jobs. They can't find jobs. They're not saving the money. The last thing on their mind is purchasing a home at this time. The first thing on their mind is, how am I going to make my student loan payment? And what we are seeing is that all across the country, condos, homes, they're all being purchased using cash, and this has pumped up the market completely. And what's very interesting is from 2000 through 2007, Nevada and Florida had an average condo cash share of 22.9% and 35.4% respectively. During the recession, shares spiked, and Nevada post-recession has since averaged 85%, while Florida is averaging 81%. So between 2000 and 2007, cash purchases were very low. Now you're telling me 38% of the country lost their wealth after 2008, and cash purchases increased with more and more people out of work, underemployed, not saving money, but cash purchases skyrocketed. Does this make any sense? Of course it doesn't. What does make sense is the Fed has been printing and creating money, giving this free money to investors and hedge funds to come in and pump up the market with cash purchases. This is why we're seeing the mortgage originations, refinancing, first-time home buyers all declining, because that is the heart of America, and it is imploding on itself. Okay, now I know I talk about all this stuff every single day except for Sunday. I give myself a day of rest. And what we're seeing here is that people, you know, well, why would the corporate media lie to us? Why would the government lie to us or use propaganda? Well, I've mentioned this in reports pretty far back here, and I decided to mention it one more time here. We have to understand, in the National Defense Authorization Act, it gives the United States the legal right, the government, to use propaganda on the American people. So now they are free to propagandize everybody. They can feed stories into the corporate media, and they can have them report whatever they want. This is according to the NDAA. It allows them to do this. And if anyone questions them, they can refer back to this law and say, no, we have the right to do this. And every time we see propaganda, let's use real estate, for instance, as they're telling us it's recovering, things are looking better, the weather is the problem, and we all know this is propaganda. This is how they are allowed to do this. For those people who are having a problem with this, they created a law which allowed them to use propaganda on the people. If you don't believe what I'm saying, you can look it up for yourself. Look at the NDAA. Go ahead and read it. You will see it in there. Now, it looks like the Obama administration is being ordered to explain the illegality of targeting killing of Americans using drones. A federal appeals court in New York ordered the Obama administration to release at least part of a Department of Justice memo that sets out the president's purported legal justification for his order to kill an American citizen in drone attacks. And we have to remember, the people that they are killing are not terrorists, they're not Al-Qaeda, they are people fighting back and want their countries back. And right now, they need to explain how they have the right to kill innocent citizens, especially American people. Not that every single person on the earth has the right to live, because they do, but they want to know, you just killed an American citizen and this is an attack on the American people. What gives you the right to do this? And of course, Attorney General Eric Holder issued the first official acknowledgement Wednesday that the United States has killed 4 U.S. citizens with drone strikes, probably a lot more than that, but let's just go with 4. When asked about the collateral deaths of innocent civilians during these attacks on militants, Brennan said that the American pilots controlling the drones make every effort to avoid killing innocents. Today, I'm simply say that all our counterterrorism efforts in Yemen are conducted in concert with the Yemeni government, the puppet government that the United States controls. When direct action is taken, every effort is made to avoid any civilian casualty. Well, let's just take this home to the United States. Let's say there were drone attacks here in the United States, and a drone hit an apartment building, and there was one Al-Qaeda on the, one terrorist, I should say, on the 5th floor, and it took out 4 others on the floor above. What do you think the United States government would do in this type of situation? They would be outraged. They'd be going after that country. This is the same thing that's happening all across the Middle East. They are using drones and the excuse that these people are terrorists, they're Al-Qaeda, but they're actually the people trying to take back their country. They're trying to take back everything that was taken away from them. They want the central bankers, the United States government, out of their country, and we're seeing the people rise up more and more. The Yemen people are rising up, the Iraqi people are rising up, the Libyan people are rising up, and right now the Libyan people are putting a stop to any type of oil exports at this time, and most of the Libyan people are maintaining control of their country, and the last stage is actually to push out the government completely and take full control. And this is what the central bankers, U.S. government, are really worried about. They're afraid that once these people take back their country, these countries will no longer sell the natural resources using the U.S. dollar, and countries will dump the dollar in their reserves and use other types of currency or gold, silver, or whatever they're going to use to purchase the natural resources. Now, in Georgia, And we understand that the United States government has been planning, plotting to disarm the American people, and they will not stop this. We have to remember that the UN Arms Treaty and the Dianne Feinstein gun bill are still pending in the Senate at this time. John Kerry already signed the UN Arms Treaty. The President will sign it if the Senate will pass it. And what we are seeing right now is states are starting to make up their own laws. And of course they don't really have to, because the Second Amendment pretty much covers it all, that we have the right to bear arms and they cannot be infringed upon. Infringe means to limit. So the government cannot create any laws to limit our ability to carry arms or own arms. But even though they still do, it's completely null and void according to Marbury v. Madison, which says any law repugnant to the Constitution is completely null and void. And again, these are the people's rights. But in Georgia, Georgia Governor Nathan Deal has signed a new law into effect, nicknamed the Guns Everywhere Bill, that allows individuals to carry weapons into bars, schools, and even some churches and government buildings. Officially titled the Safe Carry Protection Act of 2014, the bill easily sailed through the state legislature and was signed by Deal on Wednesday. It goes into effect on July 1st. So we can see pretty much all these states are starting to push their agenda forward, and they are going against what the government is trying to do, what the government is trying to make them do, and that is to disarm the American people. Now, the IRS is out there saying that they need the ability to track the taxpayer license plates. The Internal Revenue Service and the Forest Service, and among others, have awarded nearly $500,000 to Vigilant Solutions, a California-based company that provides tools for tracking license plates and for accessing license plate databases. Why would the IRS and the Forest Service need this technology? Well, they're saying that they need it for investigative tools similar to other law enforcement agencies. Well, the question I have, instead of spending millions and millions of dollars, and they really, really need this tool, why don't they just go to other law agencies and get this information if they already have it? Why do they really need it? Is it for some other reason? Well, of course it is. And it's most likely the same reason why the Transportation Security Administration is expanding its screening of passengers before they arrive at the airport by searching a wide array of government and private databases that include records like car registration, license plates, and employment information. And this is some of the information that they're collecting and using to screen every single person. Private employment information. Why do they need that? I have no idea. Vehicle registration, travel history, property ownership records, physical characteristics, tax identification numbers, past travel itineraries, law enforcement information, intelligence information, passport numbers, frequent flyer information, other identifiers linked to DHS database. What does all this have to do with national security, everybody? Nothing. Why do they need to know who you're employed with? They don't need to know your travel history. They don't need to know your vehicle registration. They don't need to know what properties you own. It makes no sense. And of course, they're saying this is for your safety. We want to streamline you going into the airport and writing. No, this is a tracking and shakedown of the American people. It's removing all of your rights. And this is what the pat-downs are for. This is what all this information is for. It is to track you. It is to make you feel like you have no rights. It's giving them, and most of the people are giving them permission to do this against the American people. And they have no right to your personal information to stop terrorists. All the rights, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the First Amendment, all of these rights here don't allow them to do this type of search and have this information at their fingertips. Now, in Louisiana, they're taking this a step further. Louisiana is creating a database of citizens who represent a risk to the state. Now, you have to remember, I said this in many reports, they are in the process of creating social profiles. And they want to track and have all this information to understand who is going to be a threat to the government officials. This is why they want all this information. This is why they've been collecting it. They want to know where you are, who you're in contact with, what properties you own, what they can seize. They need all this information on every single person. But this goes on to say, authorities in Louisiana are compiling a database of information on every citizen in order to identify people who are a risk to the state, as well as pinpointing future criminals in an effort to allow the state to intervene in that person's life. The comprehensive person profile, which they call it, I call it a social profile, developed by a software company, SAS, uses information from every agency of state government to compile personal data entries on Louisiana's residents, which are centralized on one database. Well, this is all going to be hooked into the Real ID, and we will see this at our checkpoints coming soon. The purpose of the database, in the words of Broadwater, are to detect fraud and to identify people who are a risk to the state down the road based upon the information we know about the individual. This is exactly what I've been saying. They are creating social profiles because they want to know who are those people that are going to pose a problem to the government, to the authorities, to the power class. This is why they've been doing this. This is why they've been doing this all across the country and on a federal level. And of course, the program is being introduced under the guise of making the lives of Louisiana residents better, by way of things like speeding up the process of renewing driver license. This is absolutely ridiculous. You don't need to make our lives better. I'm going to tell you how you can make our lives better. Get out of our lives. Get rid of the central bank so we're not so far into debt where we can't make a living. Stop creating wars all across the country. This is how you can make our lives better. Stop spying on us. Stop telling us what to do. This is how you can make our lives better. But this is not what they're doing. This is not their agenda. Their agenda is to chip away at the rights of the people, and before you know it, they have total control over every single person. And here's one more that they're doing. The Supreme Court authorizes warrantless stops and searches based on anonymous tips. The U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling that allows police to stop and search a driver based on exclusively on an anonymous tip. So if they get an anonymous tip, they're allowed to go find that person and search them, which is a complete violation of the Fourth Amendment because they don't have a warrant or any type of motive or anything else to search you. But this is how they are continually doing this. They are pushing the envelope here and chipping away at everyone's rights. So basically what can happen if, let's say you're a driver and you're driving down the street and you're a little upset about the way this person's driving, you can call them in, have them say, oh, this person looks suspicious, or if you see this person on the street, call them in and say they look suspicious, and now they can come and they can search the person, they can do pretty much whatever they want. And this all goes back to removing the rights of the people. Okay, now we understand that the Ukraine situation is really getting bad at this point. It looks like the central bankers are provoking. They give the green light. Go ahead, provoke. Let's see what happens. Let's see what Russia is going to do as we bring in the Donbass Battalion, the death squads, the Secret Service, the secret elite force from the right-wing section. Let's bring in unmarked military forces, Blackwater, paid mercenaries, and let's see how Russia reacts to the situation. Let's see if we can provoke them enough to bring in troops into the country. And if they bring in troops to the country, this is the green light that we can go to war with Russia. And of course, the puppet government is out there saying, whoa, hey, what are you doing over there, Russia? And right now, Russia is saying that, listen, Kiev needs to de-escalate the conflict. They need to move back and move their military forces back and have a dialogue with the protesters, the people of the country. Let's not use force right now. Let's talk about what is going on here and see if we can come to some type of an agreement. But of course, The central bankers, the puppet government, their instructions are, no, our goal is war. We need to provoke. We need to provoke. We need to move forward. This is our goal. And again, look at this. The Ukrainian government is using military on their own people. They're coming down on their own people. And this goes on to say, using the army, not to mention leaning on radical nationalists, against the people is an absolutely unacceptable form of violence. Moreover, I believe this is a criminal decision, Lavrov said. We have no doubts that it is the Kiev authorities who should make the first steps. The U.S. should influence the Kiev authorities. I have no doubts that our American partners may influence the people who have invested themselves with power in Kiev, and I have already said this, Lavrov said. And again, he's telling them, listen, back off a little bit, move the military, the armed forces back a little bit, and let's have a dialogue. But again, this is not what they want. Now, Putin is saying that he wants the Russian human rights experts to pay very close attention to the situation, and let's see what is going on here and record what is going on here. Now, since the anti-terrorism forces have moved forward and they created these battalions to go to each parts of the region and cities to control the people, Russia has decided to bring their forces to the Ukraine-Russian border, and they are exercising their right to have military drills, and of course they can have military drills on their soil, and no other country can say anything about it because it's within their borders. Russia has begun extensively military exercises on its Ukrainian border following the escalation of violence in eastern Ukraine. The order to use force against civilians has already been given, and if this military machine is not stopped, the amount of casualties will only grow, and this is coming from the Russian defense minister. And we can see right now, and they're saying there's about 11,000 Ukrainian soldiers, 160 tanks, 230 armed carriers, and at least 150 artillery pieces are involved in the operation against anti-Kiev activists. That is a lot of armed forces, and really, to show good faith, just like in the Clive and Bundy situation, they need to back off a little bit and say, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about what's going on before we kill people or we start this war. But again, I have to say it, just like I said with the de-escalation agreement, it is not going to go anywhere because the puppet government in Ukraine, the central bankers, U.S. government, they have one agenda, and that is to start the war any way they can, in any place they can, because it doesn't really matter. The players are all the same. Now, UN Chief Ban Ki-moon warns Ukraine crisis could spin completely out of control. You think? Well, yeah, it will spin completely out of control. But he went on to say that he warned that the crisis in Ukraine threatened to spin out of control and urged all sides to refrain from the violence. That would be great. Every side, just back off a little bit. Just back off and let's talk about it. But they're not going to let this happen. Military action must be avoided at all costs, Ban continued, urging all sides to immediately refrain from violence, intimidation, or provocative actions and find a way forward toward de-escalation. Ban's comments came as Ukraine's military launched assaults to retake rebel-held eastern towns. Now, of course, the puppet government is out there, and they're saying Ukraine's foreign ministry has now given Russia a 48-hour ultimatum to explain its military exercises near the nation's border. Russia really doesn't have to explain anything. They can have military drills wherever they want. And how does this affect what is going on inside of Ukraine? I mean, they're the ones who are moving anti-terrorism and coming down on the people, and Russia's having drills inside the country. Russia didn't come into the country, and they're saying they have a 48 ultimatum to do what? What, to move the drills 3 miles back? I'm not getting clear on this, but this is propaganda. This is how they provoke. This is how they want Russia to respond. Now the news is out there saying they have 48 hours. Russia's ready to invade. Or will they invade or will they back off? And if they back off, oh my God, look. And this is what the corporate media is doing right now. They are spinning this to make it seem like Russia brought these troops here to invade Ukraine. Hey, and they might if they continually provoke, and eventually they might happen. But looking at the actions of Putin, I think he's just flexing the muscle and just saying, listen, we're here. You need to back off right now. And ever since this, the drill, the Russian forces came on near the border, it seems like the anti-terrorism forces went inactive for a little bit. I don't know if they started up again, but they most likely will. This will not end. This will continually move forward. It will not stop. Now, the U.S. Is beginning to bring in more missile interceptors planned for the bases in Europe. The United States has begun fielding a new missile interceptor that is planned in the short term to be deployed in Romania and the Mediterranean. The U.S. Navy is now deploying the Standard Missile 3-Block 1B interceptor, which is designed to destroy short and medium-range ballistic missiles. The anti-missile system will be incorporated into an evolving NATO ballistic missile shield that has been portrayed as defending against a possible missile attack from the Middle East. More recently, though, some Eastern Europe alliances members have suggested the system could become a means of deterring a newly military resurgent Russia. That's why this was always there. It wasn't for Iran. It wasn't for Syria. It was put right on the borders of Russia on purpose. It was there to say, listen, we're building up this shield. We're encircling Russia. We're encircling China. This was all preparation for World War III. And this is why this was put there. Now, the troops are arriving in Poland for their drills, and this is completely rising the tensions in Ukraine, in Russia, and it doesn't look like this is going away anytime soon. Now, we understand that there is going to be some type of false flag event occurring here in the United States. And it seems like the United States has been prepping the people of the country for this. And right now, AIG is going to expand their cyber coverage to include physical attacks posed by cyber attacks. So they're going to cover these areas that might be hit by bombs and cyber attacks. And it's very interesting that they're doing it at this point, that they're creating this insurance to cover damages if something should happen. Now, the New York Times admits it pushed fabricated evidence about Iraq, Syria, and Ukraine. The New York Times pushed fabricated evidence in the run-up to the Iraq War. Really? They didn't have weapons of mass destruction? Surprising. And, of course, they apologized in their newspaper that it was inaccurate and one-sided. They also apologized for the chemical weapons attack that they said Syria was using, and now it shows that Syria was not the perpetrator of the chemical weapons attack. And the New York Times also is retracting those photos and everything about the Russian soldiers being inside Ukraine. They're saying it was a mistake. This wasn't really what we thought it was, and they're retracting that. So you can see that as the New York Times is supposed to be doing investigating reporting, they're receiving propaganda from the United States government and they're running with it. And actually, if you saw those photos, they put in fuzzy, and this is what they always do. Whenever you see a fuzzy photo, blurred or switched around, it is doctored photographs, and they make it fuzzy on purpose so you can't really tell what's really going on or really who it is, and it's completely done on purpose to confuse everyone because it's not a real story. And with the high definition cameras today and the crispness and the sharpness of photographs, it is really hard to get a blurry picture. Now, David Cameron, he is out there once again, and it seems like I'm watching a rerun of August of 2013. Britain must bomb Syria to prevent more devastating chemical weapons attack. And this is coming out today. This is what he said back in August. UK forces are primed to take part in clinical strikes against brutal dictator Bashar Assad. after the Prime Minister said the world must not stand idly by. His threat came as U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel declared that American forces are ready to go as soon as Obama gives some type of order. So it seems like we're going through the same motions again that we went through during the August of 2013. And this is why they're continually bringing up these chemical weapons attack. They want you to believe that Assad has chemical weapons and he's going to use them. He's going to use them on his own people. He's going to use them on America. And what we're seeing right now is that the CIA is quietly ramping up aid to Syrian rebels at this time. The U.S. is providing more arms and training to the moderate rebels in Syria under a growing secret program run by the CIA in Jordan. Well, we know this already. It's really not a secret anymore. Russian leaders appear unwilling to help end the 3-year-old civil war and are continuing to provide weapons to Assad. Finally, all al-Qaeda fighters and their allies are expanding in Syria, and a development that some believe could threaten the U.S. homeland. So, let's see. Russia is providing Assad with weapons, which is a sovereign government. They have a contract, they're receiving weapons. The United States does this with many countries where they have a contract and they give them weapons. The United States is funding the rebels to overthrow a government and providing them with weapons. Well, we really shouldn't, United States, central bankers, shouldn't really be involved in the internal workings of a sovereign nation. And for some reason, the United States central bankers, they like to be involved, and they've been involved for over 3 years right now. And this goes on to say that in addition to the arms transfer, a training program already in place in Jordan and run by the CIA will grow in the coming months. Of course it is, because they are ramping up for the next phase. They are going to bring this event here. And of course, this goes on, and they've been using this argument all along, and this is coming from James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence. He told Congress that a faction linked to al-Qaeda in Syria, the Nusra Front, does have aspirations for attacks on the homeland, which is the United States. And it's strange that they keep using the word homeland, which concerns me. But anyhow, what we are seeing is a huge buildup to what is coming, and they have just arrested, and we understand, let's just go back for a sec. They're continually putting out the propaganda that Assad has chemical weapons. They have just charged 3 people conspiring to smuggle chemical lab equipment into Syria to push this agenda forward for the false flag. And we are seeing this come out, and they were arrested. They had the lab equipment, chemical warfare devices. All of this was being smuggled into the Syrian rebels. And what has come from this is that they're gathering more intel, is that al-Qaeda militants are likely to carry out a false flag chemical attack in Syria similar to the August 2013. And this is coming from Gordon Duff, an analyst. And what we are seeing right now is pretty much the same thing. Everything before August 2013, we saw the buildup, a little small chemical attack, a little small chemical attack, and then eventually the big one. We're seeing the same thing happen here. But I don't think this next chemical, they might use a big one in Syria, but this will not move the American people. This will only drive them to say that Assad definitely has chemical weapons. And this is what they want the American people to believe. Then they will use the event here in the United States. Then they will say, see, he does have chemical weapons. They exploded in this city. They're hitting us with cyber attacks. And this is where we will see the false flag event. This is where all eyes will come off of the Fed, the U.S. government, for this economic collapse. All eyes will then turn to Syria if they can't provoke Russia enough in Ukraine to get this war started. And what we will see is we will see the economy come to its knees. The stock market, the NASDAQ, the BAT system already have the kill switches to cut this off when they want. They already have the bail-in documents. Europe already has the bail-in documents set, ready to go. The same with Australia and Canada. And they understand that these countries that are controlled by the private Western Central Bank are really doomed at this point. They are in a huge amount of debt. There's no way out. The unemployment is skyrocketing. The only thing they have right now is keeping all eyes on the stock market, and that is getting harder and harder to do. And all the information coming about real estate, retail, unemployment is starting to show that this illusion is just that, an illusion, and they realize this, and they only have one way out of this, and this is to create this major event to do something here in the United States to show that another country caused this economic collapse. And again, we all need to be prepared for this, for what is coming. If the lights go out, or I should say when, because Janet Napolitano told us it's not if but when, and every single other government official has been telling us and leading us to the belief that yes, the grid will go out, and we're seeing many instances of where they've been testing this. You need to have food, you need to have water, you need to have a weapon to protect your family, you need gold and silver, but most importantly, water and food and medication. And you have to understand that you might need to survive without electric, or without going to the store, without maybe talking to people because they might be desperate outside of your home. And you need the ability to move into different locations if need be, depending where you live. I mean, if you live in the woods, not big of a problem. If you live near the inner city, that might be a problem for you. So you need to take precautions. We do have time here. We had time all along. Everyone should be preparing, and that's what we need to do at this time. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.